Are the tech giants ethnic cleansing the United States West Coast? Coming up next on Deceptions of the Ages News. Hello everybody and welcome to Deceptions of the Ages News. The first thing I want to announce is yay! We hit 200 subscribers, and I wanted to say thank you to everybody because I've only been a channel for a little less than 2 months. So having this many subscribers so quickly and so many views, people are really starting to take notice, especially Google and YouTube, that my viewers are actually very concerned about what's going on in the United States and the world, and we are showing our voice by commenting and subscribing to channels like mine. So again, thank you guys, and I hope you enjoy the video today. It's very enlightening, I'm sure, and I've taken a lot of little tidbits of information and I've tried to string it together for you. So let's take a look. All right, so with my 200 subscribers, let's get started. The first thing I want to do, and this video is not, I'm not going to make any statements, I'm just going to ask questions. And so if that bothers you, that people ask questions and you have to call them a racist, then you really don't even belong in the human race, because we would not have evolved if when somebody asked a question that was uncomfortable, if we started acting like an ape and bouncing around and shouting and doing all these things these people do on the television. Anyway, if you're the kind of person that does that, then you go ahead and do that and enjoy yourself, because you'll probably get some good exercise. But for everybody else, I just want to pose a few questions to you and give you some evidence to back up what I think the answers are. All right, first thing before we get started is that there are going to be some of you out there who have a little bit less of an education than most, and for whatever reason, you're going to come out and say, oh, that guy, he is just a racist. Well, obviously you have a hard time reading things, and I would encourage you to read my books about teaching for almost 14 years in the Middle East before you make such a stupid comment. But if you want to do that, and I'm sure there's many people that will, you just go ahead and make all the comments that you want. Because you can't be a racist and you can't call somebody a racist unless you're a racist yourself. So with that point being made, go ahead, if you're a racist, leave your comments below and do whatever you want to do. And also I want to announce, before we go too much farther, I am running for governor of Washington State in 2020. So if you live in Washington State or you have friends in Washington State, please pay attention. And I'm going to try to get our students some really nice schools, free tuition, and we're going to try to create what I call the state of education in Washington State. Being a teacher, I really want to revamp the education model for the entire United States, starting in Washington State. Okay, question number 1. What country in the world allows almost unlimited immigration? They allow entire cultures to come into their country and take over their elections and erode the culture, protest about the home culture's religion, and then they get paid by the government, but not out of the taxpayer's pocket, but out of the children of the taxpayer's pocket. Okay. My next question has to do with what is called protected classes. In the United States, if you fill out a job application, you don't get a job based on whether or not you have the highest qualifications for the job. You get a job based on a race card that you're forced to fill out for a federal, state, or any kind of job where you apply that employer gets government contracts. You have to fill out a race card, okay? So, why do we have to fill out a race card in the United States if this is not a racist society? Now, what a protected class means is that if you go to a lawyer, they have to take your case pro bono. You don't have to pay for it unless you win, okay? But if you are not a protected class, that means that if you go to a lawyer and you try to file a case, you better shell out a lot of money. And I've asked a lawyer before about this. It's $10,000 just to hire the lawyer. That's just to start with, okay? So if you are poor and white and you have a race complaint, good luck with that. Okay, so when we started, I had two questions. The first question was, how many countries in the world allow unmitigated immigration of foreign cultures who hate the host culture and who make the host culture put their children in debt so that those people can come to this country with their children and talk about how much they hate the host culture? We are the only country in the world that is stupid enough to do that. Okay, so those are the two questions. What country in the world allows unfettered immigration of people who have nothing but hatred for the host country, and then they have to be paid to live here to destroy the country? How many countries in the world actually do that? And a sub-question, how did that happen? Question number two, why is it that white males are the only unprotected people in the United States? And is that not the most blatant form of racism? Well, don't answer yet, because we're going to talk a little bit more about my book, Deceptions of the Ages. But let's go in and let's look at some other things first. My second question was, why are white males, not in a protected class? Well, obviously, that is racism, it's extinction, and you really need to look at my book. But I don't want to answer that question for you. If you have answers to these questions, go ahead and put them in the comments below, because I'd sure like to know what the answers are. And if I'm a crazy racist, okay, you just tell me I'm a crazy racist, because you know what? I'm a history teacher and I see this has happened throughout the world. I've already given you so many examples. And now they're doing it to us. And you're going to sit there and tell us it's not happening to you. Well, that's what they do. That's what the Nazis did to the Jews. They said it's not happening, and anybody who complained about it, guess what? Off to the education camp, which meant they never were seen again. Okay, so what does this really mean, this term ethnic cleansing? Ethnic cleansing is basically, it just means getting people out that you don't like. And now we've seen that in the United States when the Europeans came and kicked the natives out and said, oh, that land looks really good. We're going to just take that over and you guys can go live someplace else and enjoy yourselves over there because we're going to take care of you. Now, the second kind of ethnic cleansing was the Adolf Hitler kind of ethnic cleansing, where he tried to eliminate all of the Jews out of Germany. Now, that wasn't cool at all, and people would really have to wonder, how did he manage to get away with that, and how did he get loans from the banks to implement these crazy plans? So, in the 1990s, the Yugoslavian country, or the country of Yugoslavia, had a war between its populations of Muslims and Serbians and Croatians. And what happened was, with that war, was that a lot of Muslims were allowed to move in to Albania. And according to people that I talked to around the world, they just said basically that the Muslims came in and just started to multiply. And pretty soon they were just overrunning the country until people said, hey, this is enough, right? And so what we had was that horrible, rotten Adolf Hitler type devastation that happened in Serbia, Croatia, and what was the former Yugoslavia. So, how does ethnic cleansing happen in the United States? I mean, obviously, they're not just going to start lining people up and shooting them, are they? Well, no, of course not. Because if you read my book, Deceptions of the Ages, that's not necessary at all. In fact, the better way to do it in the United States is to use the media, the corporate government media, and the government to destroy somebody. And how do you destroy somebody? Well, you label them. They could be a UFO nut, or they could be mentally unstable, which is exactly what the government of Washington State is trying to do to me right now. Because I've been on LNI for 2 years and they still haven't fixed my knee, never gave me any medication. They want to label me as somehow mentally unstable because I'm not happy about it, because I'm in pain. So this is what is called ethnic cleansing. Now, you have probably experienced, no matter what your race, a form of ethnic cleansing when you filled out a government or whatever job application and you had to put down your race, right? Now, if you didn't put down your race, then obviously you would not get the job automatically because the racist government wants you to declare your race. Why? Because the government is trying to perpetuate I don't want to say extinction, but they want to make sure that whites, again, back to the protected class thing for white males, that basically we're put on the back burner, and that all of these other people that they're allowing in are allowed to flourish, have families, get loans, do everything, because they're not white. So, if you are just sitting there going, oh my gosh, this guy's a horrible racist, let me ask you a question. Let's talk about something called diversity. What exactly does diversity mean? It means you have a diverse workforce, population, whatever, that is different than the normal population, which means you change it, which means you alter it. Okay, so if you live in America and you are not for diversity, then you must have some kind of problem. If you don't want people coming from third world countries and taking over your country and practicing a religion and hating on you, which is exactly what they're doing to us. Okay, so how does all of this racism affect Google and Microsoft? Well, all you have to do is look around lovely Redmond, Washington. Now, Redmond, Washington in the 1980s, when Microsoft started, was basically a homogenous middle-class community, right? But after the 1990s, actually after September 11th, Microsoft and Bill Gates decided they didn't like Americans anymore. So they imported millions, or I don't want to say millions, but they imported hundreds of thousands of Chinese and Indians, and not to work here, but to live and to take up residence and bring their families and huge families and come to the United States and have more families and more children, so that pretty soon places like Redmond, Washington and Bellevue, Washington are no longer predominantly white. In fact, all of the whites are fleeing from these cities as fast as they possibly can because we are being ethnically cleansed economically. All right, so let's talk about this Prager case, or whatever it is. So here is the gist of the case, and it is that Google has been discriminating for some time against white males. Now, this has been going on in the West Coast for a long time, but it's just that finally somebody was somehow had the money as a white person to file a lawsuit against Google for discriminating against them as being male, as being white. Okay, so now if you take that and you extrapolate a little bit more and look at this list of videos, this is about my book Deceptions of the Ages, which is basically just about the Latter-day Saint religion. It's about history, and it is fact-based. The entire thing is just research. It's what other people and other historians have already said. There's pretty much nothing new in it. There's a lot of stuff about the Latter-day Saint Church. There's nothing in it offensive. It's just history. And for some reason, history is now offensive to Google, and it's offensive to their advertisers. So my question is, who was working at Google that this would be a Christian, be nice to everybody, be charitable, have faith. How is that religion offensive to anybody? So we all know the answer to that. It's offensive to Muslims, okay? Christianity is offensive to Muslims. I know that. I see how they freak out whenever you even mention Christianity or Jesus, right? So there is your question. How many Muslims are at Google, and who is influencing Google's support or political bias? Because obviously they are behind this massive influx of illegal aliens and of Muslims and of terrorists and of refugees. Why is Google so bent on destroying the United States culture? Why? So, does this ethnic cleansing stop at Google and Microsoft? Absolutely not. Look at the government of Washington State, California, and Oregon. Look at the Ninth Circuit Court that has challenged the immigration ban of President Trump again and again. And I just want to point out here that when you oppose President Trump, we voted for him. We said we wanted him to do what he said he was going to do. And when you oppose Trump, and all you idiots in the media, you're not opposing President Trump, you're opposing 2/3 of the United States. So we're going to see how that works for you in the future. But I just want to point that out, that when these people oppose President Trump, they oppose Americans. And when they say it's Trump's wall, it's not Trump's wall, it's America's wall. All right? And if you don't want to be in America, then I would welcome you to go someplace else, because actually the Middle East is awesome. There's places like Thailand, just fantastic to live in. Go to South and Central America and live with those people that are illegals, and maybe build them a house or something down there when you take them back home. Okay, so the government in Washington State is with the Ninth Circuit Court, and with their hiring practices and their discrimination against vets and against anybody with a conservative viewpoint. Well, that must be the extent of it, right? Absolutely not. This racism and this discrimination goes just much farther than Microsoft, Google, and the government on the West Coast. Now, all we have to do to understand that, let's look at some of the politicians practicing in the West Coast. In Seattle, you have this Pashawat, or whatever her name is. She is a transplant from India that has come over here with no other goal than to, and I work with Indians. I'm married to an Indian. I've dated Indians. So they brought these people in here with no other objective other than to attack Americans. We voted for Trump, but you want to attack us. And what right do you have to do that? We were so nice to let you and your families into our country, and you just come here to attack us. So now we've got this other one that was elected in the Redmond district, and in that race, as we see here on this chart, her funding all came from California and Washington, D.C., okay? So funding from who? The tech giants, right? So you bring in people, and she's from California to begin with. She's not even native to Washington, and what she does is she comes here and she's big on labeling veterans and people that have veterans as people that have mental disorders. Okay, so when you talk about a takeover, like a communist takeover of a country, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to say, oh, these people are crazy, and so let's label them as having a mental disorder. Okay, so you're probably saying, oh no, what do we do? Are we going to freak out, and are we going to get guns? No. What I want you to do is just exercise the democratic right that I and many people like me have defended. If you are a veteran, you exercise that oath to the Constitution. You go out and vote for whoever you want to vote for in the next election. I'm running for office in Washington State. I'm running for governor. I encourage you, if you're a veteran, run wherever you are. It doesn't matter. We've got nothing to lose. We have everything to win. I'm here to take back Washington State. So if you support me, vote for me. Buy my books. Support me on Patreon. If you have comments, leave them in the description below. I've been attacked for 2 years by the state of Washington. It's getting very harder and harder to keep doing these videos, but I'm going to keep fighting on because I don't have any other choice. That this is Deceptions of the Ages News, and we'll see you next time. Hello everybody, and thanks for sticking around. Now, I know that you stuck around because you enjoyed the video and it really hit something within you, and you would like to see more material like this. Well, if that's the case, then I would like to ask you to consider subscribing to me on my Patreon account. Now, I will leave a link in the description below, and you don't have to pledge that much, maybe just $1, $2, or $3 a month. But I not only make videos, but I'm also an author. I have 5 great books that are available at hindsight.com. So if you would like to consider supporting me in that respect, then not only would you be supporting me, but you'd also be getting some awesome books. And what I would like to do eventually is be one of the greatest authors in the United States. But I'm competing with major publishers, and it's very difficult, and you have to have money to do that in order to be able to produce more material. So I have many books in the works, but I just don't have the funding, and if I don't have funding, then I have to go back and find some other way to bring in money. So please consider a donation to my Patreon account, or just go ahead and buy a couple of my great books. You'll love them, and I'm sure you'll come back to buy the rest of the collection. I'm Matthew Hines. Thank you for your donation,